Yes, 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 yes. Only here for God. You have a variation on the words, I noticed there.
Right off our website.
Right off of whose website?
On Ricky's.
Oh, but the word...
Three versions.
Does she? Oh, okay. That's called artistic license, what she can do since she's the artist. And it's really true. We're only here for God, and we're only here for God to... It's the same thing, another version of letting go, right? I wrote in my little blurb this week about the idea that... Do I have this on? No, I don't. It would be helpful if I put it where it's supposed to be. I'm just letting it hang, and that doesn't work. Check, check, check. How's that? Just ignore everything I said. You didn't hear it anyway. Wasn't important. It was a bunny trail. I was over here. Anyway, I wrote in my my little blog article, which is a little summary of what I'm supposed to be talking about, and sometimes it actually matches, but we'll see how that goes today. Is that this whole idea of letting go is, it's been overused, and how many times have you heard let go and let God? Yeah, I mean it's like a well-worn phrase, and it's a good one, yet what it asks of us to really let go is quite an extraordinary counter to the impulses that we have to take control of our life. And the reason we tend to want to take control of our lives is going to be really the deeper subject of today, which is we need, the apparent need for control comes from the notion that we don't trust life to unfold. Isn't that accurate? Even if we don't want to admit it, it's implied in the notion that I need to make sure that everything goes a particular way so that I'm okay. And now we would deny that we feel that way, but isn't that what most of the discursive thoughts that run through our mind throughout the day are, is how am I doing? Am I okay? What does that mean? What does that mean? Why is that? And there's sort of this constant vigilance that is sort of like there's a sentry, that's on duty all the time, 24/7 in our minds, sort of like surveying the landscape of our lives and trying to assess whether this is safe. If I go this way, what will happen? If I go this way, what will happen? If she does this, then how am I going to feel? If she doesn't do that, then I'll feel this. So in other words, there's this sort of notion that my well-being is contingent and conditional upon what happens out here in this life. Is that fairly accurate? And the spiritual response to that notion is BS. In other words, that's your belief system, but it isn't the truth. It isn't the truth. Because before you even came on the scene with your whole story of what you need in order to be okay, the universe was doing just fine. Stars were shining and planets were going, in the orbits, and, babies were being born and flowers were blooming, and all of these natural and normal and perfectly okay functions of life were happening. And then we came into this bodily experience, and along the way, we made certain decisions about life needing to be a particular way. And we come by it honestly, so we're not here to malign ourselves for having those beliefs or have that belief system. But it's to say that we're not stuck with it, yes? That may be the case, that may be how it started for us, but it doesn't have to end that way for us. In other words, we're not stuck with a belief system that is not rooted in the truth of our being, right? That this is what the good news and the great joy is of these spiritual teachings, is that we have an opportunity to correct our misperceptions of what life is and what life needs to be in order for us to be okay. And because we have that power, and we even have the authority that's given to us, we're not stuck with how we think. We may not have a lot of control over environment or circumstances, and certainly we have trouble controlling people, yeah? But we are not given the automatic responses that we think that we have. And that's kind of where we're going this week. So this is the third week in a series on this book, The Untethered Soul, which is a well-known book by many people. I've gone through it a number of times. And as a minister, I've done it, I think, 3 or 4 times as a series. And so here we go again. But I want to do a little review. The reason I'm doing this review, and I know that you all listened intently the last time and the last 2 times I was here, but it's so important that we get the foundation of this, because it really is the foundation of all spiritual growth and unfoldment. So I'm going to go over it again, and forgive me if you say, you said that and you said that last week, because I just think that I can't hear this enough. So indulge me, if you would. So in week 1, we said the quintessential question of all spiritual seeking is what question? What is the primary question of all spiritual seeking? Who am I? Who am I? Now, and I don't know, how would you answer that today? What would you say? Or maybe even you don't like who am I, but what am I? What am I? What would you say? What would be what way that you would respond to that? Soul. Anything? Say again? A fragment of God having a human experience. Great. What else? Does anyone have a... The Christed being. If you were going to go strictly based upon your experience to answer that question, because that's really what this is all about. It isn't the hokey pokey, by the way. It's answering that question experientially. What am I? Close your eyes for a minute. Just ask this question. Who or what am I? And you might find that the voice in your head begins to answer that. You might come up with the normal human description. You might say, I'm a man, or I'm a woman, or I'm this, or I'm that. But don't we know that all of those human descriptors relate to something and describe something that is eternal or temporary? Your gender, that doesn't have to be permanent anymore, right? It's not eternal. No. Your name, you can change your name. Your occupation, you can change your occupation. Your status in life, your economic situation, your relationships, whether you're a brother or a sister or a mother or a father, all those things are, in the scheme of your human life, they are factually true. But we're talking about who you really are. And it's that journey that this book invites us to go on. And any spiritual path invites you to ask the deeper question, who or what am I really? And to arrive at an answer that doesn't break down under the scrutiny of the light of eternality or permanence is to not look in the direction of our physical, biological experience. So what's left? What's left? What is always present in your experience? What is always Because we have all kinds of experiences, the variety, the multitude, and the diversity of experiences in a human life are varied. So they can't possibly describe what you are always, what remains the you that you truly are. What is that? Consciousness. Consciousness. Love? Yeah, we can begin to realize that there are synonyms for what the spiritual word is this big word called consciousness. It's also a word called awareness. Because think of every experience you've ever had in your life, the only reason that you can relate that experience, you can describe it or recount it, is because you were there, right? And I don't mean necessarily physically there, although you probably were, but you could have an experience when that transcends this physical life, and many people do have these sort of mystical or out-of-body experiences or whatever you want to call them. And what was true about those moments was that they were aware of that experience. Is that right? Have you ever had an experience that you were not aware? No. And you can say, well, maybe when I was sleeping, I wasn't aware of that. But there is even a sense that when you wake up, you're aware that you were sleeping. So we're looking for the constant in this, this dynamic called the human life, right? We're looking for that which is always and forever present, that doesn't change. Now it may encounter change as it observes your life and all of the experiences that you go through. But does awareness ever change? Does being conscious ever change? So self-knowledge, according to the author here, is a subtraction process, which means it's an unlearning of who and what we think we are in order to reveal our true, essential, natural self. Yes? So when we tend to think about growth, and people say, I want to grow, and we think in terms of more, yes? And usually that has a lot to do with what's that word that my wife uses all the time? She's a kind of a clothes person, a fashion person. So what's that word when you, like a makeover, right? Or something like that, a makeover, So all those notions of growth or I want more in my life usually have a lot to do with the material reality. Or in other words, the world outside of my mind or my consciousness. Yes? But if our goal is really to become more authentic, in other words, we want to know more of who we truly are, not the rising and falling, not the character who can take on various, appearances and can change one's appearance and can have a lot and then lose it all and can have a loving partner and then can go through a breakup or can be wealthy and successful and famous and then all of that can go away. But there's something that doesn't go away. So this voice in our head, the voice in our head is constantly doing this little narration. It's like we have a little reporter that's not just, it's more than a reporter, it's a reporter at a news station that is highly biased. We know, we see that sometimes, right? Oh, wait a minute, now they're entering in some opinion about this so-called factual situation. They're coloring it, and we color what we observe in our life based upon our beliefs, based upon our conditioning, yes? Do we see things as they really are, or do we see things as we are? We see things as we are. So that's not a reliable report on the truth of us, is it? It can be entertaining, and you can even agree with it, but what we're really interested in is getting to know the part of us that has never been diminished by life, that has never had a bad day, that has never needed life to be a certain way for us to be okay. Wouldn't that be a God self? Because our understanding of God is this infinite, ever-present experience of life and love and peace and wholeness that makes no demands upon the world to have that experience, right? That in other words, it's not circumstance dependent. It's happiness, it's wholeness, it's peace, it's love. These things are the given. That's who and what you are. Bless you. So that voice is not to be relied upon, even though, don't we listen to it sometimes? And doesn't it color our world? Doesn't it color our perceptions? In fact, I think it was Eckhart Tolle who wrote The Power of Now and other books. He said that once you teach a child the name of something, it no longer has the pure experience of perception that it had before you gave it a name. Even by labeling something, you now limit it, yes? And, they say, like, if a child sees a bird, flitting from branch to branch and is in the awe and the wonder of that experience, and the parent who's with the child says, "Oh, that's a bird." The next time that child, maybe not the next time, but within short order, when the child sees a bird flitting around from branch to branch, instead of it being in that sort of present moment experience of wonder, where there is nothing to limit the experience of enjoyment of that bird, it just goes, it labels it, and then it checks the box because it knows what it is. But before it knew that it had a name, it was something awe-inspiring, something that could fly and that would move and had wings, and it was all of these sort of amazing, perceptions. And this is what the voice in our head sometimes does. It limits us perceiving the beauty and the awe and the wonder of life. Because by naming it, it stops this pure ability that we have to experience things as they are, not as we are, not as we have come to believe, not according to our prejudices or our filters or our conditioning, but the way they are. Excuse me, I need to get a little mint. So, in this whole reality that we're talking about, there's a subject-object relationship, right? And this is our first step in spiritual awakening, is to realize that we are the subject of our experience. In other words, we are the what? There's a W word. Witness. We are the witness, yes? And a witness is someone who observes something that is an object, yes? And so when we realize that we sit in this place of observation, this place of awareness, that's really what we are. Even our thoughts are objects. And they so often feel like us. They feel like that voice is us. But a thought is an object. And feelings, which can feel extremely intimate, yes? If I feel sad or jealous or angry or frustrated, that feels like there's a me that is sad and angry or jealous or frustrated, yes? But that's not true. Because what we know, when we just said a moment ago, is that this awareness or this consciousness never changes. Right? So if you have a thought, it doesn't matter what the thought is. Let's say the thought is, I'm a body. Right? And the next moment you have a thought, I'm my mind. Right? And then next, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a husband. All of those things are secondary to what you are, because you can only be, in truth, that which doesn't change. We're talking your divine nature, right? And your divine nature is changeless and eternal. And what is changeless and eternal in your experience can only be that which doesn't change, that which is always present, and it can't be the objects that you observe or the experiences that you go through. It must be that of you that knows the experience. Yes? Does this make sense? So if we begin to unlayer ourselves, we begin to subtract out these notions. It's a practice that we can go throughout our given day. We can do it with the big things in life. We can say, I have a job, but I am not my job. Yes? Or I have a child, or I have children, but I'm not my children. I have a wife, I have a husband, I have a partner, I have a lover, but I'm not those things. And then when we get more intimate, and we think in terms of what happens in our head, the thoughts that we have, I am angry. That's not true. Because God self would never get angry. Your God self would have no knowledge of what even anger would be. Because your God self is always connected to all of your needs being met. Yes? If you're connected to all needs met, then you don't have any sense of lack. You don't have any sense of limitation. Those things are only come into your experience when you identify as a separate person. Yes? Now they're full of needs there. There's a laundry list of things that this human being needs. Yes? So it's really teasing out all of what is not us, sort of seeing through that, saying, oh, that can't be me. And in a way, sometimes you do this, it's just by looking at the qualifications of what is permanent versus what is temporary. Yes? So we have thoughts. What do we notice about thoughts? They come, and what else? They go. Here comes the thought. I feel stupid. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed. And then, maybe without you even doing anything, that thought is gone. Question, where does it come from? And where does it go? I mean, you ask the scientists, they believe that we all have thoughts, but they really have never seen one. There's no substance that they can measure, right? And same with feelings. Here comes a feeling. I'm angry, or I'm sad, or I'm sorrowful, or I'm jealous. Where did it come from? Oh, you could tell a story. But where did that actual feeling come from? I don't know. And then later, somehow it resolves. It's no longer here in your heart. It's gone. Right? Where'd it go? I don't know. So if we're talking about you, we would be really on shaky ground if we said, well, on my thoughts and on my feelings, because those things come and those things go. But you don't come and go. You're there to tell the story of how you were angry and then you weren't. How you were happy and then you weren't. How you thought you were this and then you didn't have that thought. And you are the subject or the witness of all that's happening in your experience. And the piece de resistance, or the ultimate realization, is to live with an ever-present knowing of that reality. To know yourself as pure consciousness, pure awareness, or if we want to use spiritual terms, your Christ nature, your Buddha nature, God's infinite being expressing as you. Yes? So, we can't say this enough because we don't all have it. Some of us do. And that's what we call a fully awake person, is someone who has had this identity shift where they no longer see themselves as a separate individual and know themselves to be part of the whole. But not part of the whole in terms of like separate part of the whole, but that they are one with the whole. That's what we talk is what truly unity is, or oneness is. That there is this appearance of all these myriad of objects and individuals and 7 billion of us running around on this planet does not come from a spiritual truth. It comes from a conditioned perception that we acquired in this lifetime in a human body. There is no notion of separation in oneness. Kind of makes sense, right? We talk about oneness all the time, but what does it imply? It implies that there is no sense of separate objects competing for space on a limited, finite plane of existence. There is no such. We made that up. And that's why they call it the dream of separation. Because, if you follow the story that's referenced in the Bible, that Adam and Eve had this moment where they were tempted to eat. First of all, they were well taken care of. This is the mythical, or however you want to see it, original couple, that they had everything they needed. They had big screen TVs and fresh organic produce everywhere you looked. Life couldn't be any better. But this tiny mad idea entered into the minds, into the mind that said, wait a minute, what would it be like to break away from this and have this sense of personal control? We can all relate to that, yeah? And it was in that they, quote, ate of the knowledge of good and evil. In other words, they ate of this notion of dualism. And dualism does not fit into a notion of unity and oneness. There's no room for duality and oneness. There's no truth of duality in oneness. It's an appearance. And Jesus said, do not judge by appearances. He said, the kingdom of God, that which we are all looking for, which is this ultimate happiness, peace, love, is here, and it's now. If you just have eyes to see. And not physical eyes, obviously. It's not, we can't perceive the kingdom of God spread upon the earth. We have to know it. We have to feel it. We have to be in this non-dual space of unity and oneness. And we were in that space, then our problems are gone. Now we may still have challenges, yes? But we no longer see life as being against us. We no longer see the circumstances of life as being in the way of our experience of love and peace and joy. Because we identified with that which never has no such needs. We become that embodiment or that fulfillment of love and peace. We become that. I mean, we already are that, but we become cognizant of it. We recognize it. In other words, we make what is an ideal, we make that into an experience as we perceive it as our deepest truth and reality. So, this week, I'm going to go over time a little bit here. So that means please increase your offering. I mean, I'm giving you more, you know. We're not containing our good, because that would be a violation of the principle of abundance. So God said to me, keep going. Yeah. So this week, and we're going to, we'll probably get more of this covered in the class, if you can stick around for the class today or watch it online. So the big challenge of being a human being is as I referenced already, it's this notion that life, I need to make sure that my life goes a certain way so that I'm okay. So I don't have to deal with my stuff. And what's our stuff? Mostly our fears, right? What we're afraid of, what we think can hurt us, what we think can limit us, what we think would deprive us of peace and love and happiness. Well, first of all, there's nothing that can deprive us of our peace and love and happiness. But if we believe that such a limitation can happen, then it becomes what? Becomes real. Not real in the real sense, but a perceived reality, yes? And perceived reality can have effects as powerful as any actual reality, yes? We all know that story. If you grew up with, not feeling love for yourself or not feeling self-esteem, which many of us, grew up with, and if we carry that into our life, then it's hard for us to expect that anyone would love us, right? I mean, that's just the way the psyche gets developed. And so if we're going through life thinking we're not lovable, then wouldn't it be likely that we will continue to act and react to the people in our life in a way that's consistent with what we believe about ourselves, yes? And so life doesn't happen, we don't see life as it is, as we just said. We see life as we are, yeah? So if we want to have a better life, it would be a non-stop job for us to constantly getting people to like us and to remind us of how wonderful we are, and to never hurt us, and for never betray us, and never say anything or do anything that would, affect these wounds that he talks about as the thorns in the book. It's like you have a little thorn. That's all of our samskaras, our wounds that we have. And if we don't deal with them in a holistic, confronting kind of a way, then we just have to go through life trying to constantly protect that thorn that's in us, that sensitive area. And so, we can put a bandage on it. We can avoid situations where someone might bump up against our thorn. When we sleep at night, we have to, put big bandages on so that we can sleep. In other words, we need to maybe distract ourselves. Maybe we feel that we need to engage ourselves in activities where we get lost in them. Yes, the internet is a perfect place to get lost in. All these things to sort of cover up this ouchy thing that we have. Yeah? So he's got this very humorous little description in here that I'm going to read to you. So because we are afraid and we have these sensitivities, we have to assign this task of keeping us safe to our mind, right? So you said to your mind, I want everyone to like me. I don't want anyone to speak badly of me. I want everything I say and do to be acceptable and pleasing to everyone. I don't want anyone to hurt me. I don't want anything to happen that I don't like. And I want everything to happen that I do like. And then you said, now mind, figure out how to make every one of these things a reality. Even if you have to think about it day and night. And your mind said, I'm on the job. I'll be working on it constantly. Yeah. That's the job we have given. Talk about setting someone up to fail. Yes? Can you imagine? Imagine going to work someplace and it gave you this impossible job description and said, this is what you have to do to succeed in this job. Well, that's exactly what we've done to our mind, to that finite aspect of us, that conditioned part of us, not who you truly are. So that mind is working round the clock, right? To try to make sure that we can landscape, shift the landscape of our life in accordance to our needs. And our needs are rooted in a false feeling about ourselves. It's rooted in the notion that we are a separate, finite, vulnerable object, person. And that person has so many needs, yes? So, here's one thing we can do. Now, the mind is going to say, distance yourself from anything that could cause you to not feel happy. Or distance yourself from anything that might hurt you. People, situations, places. So there's this constant vigilance going on that's trying to protect you. And this is the maker of what? What kind of neurosis? Anxiety, yes? The anxiety that we feel in our life has nothing to do with our Christ nature, nothing to do that we're whole and complete. It has everything to do with the believing ourselves to be separate from all that we need, yes? But that's a belief, it's not a reality, so that's the good news. So when you feel this sensitivity, and we all feel it, and there's nothing wrong with it, it isn't like we're here to try to bash ourselves into enlightenment. We're here to just acknowledge what's true and what's not true. And then work constructively to remove the false from our experience, because when we remove the false from our experience, what's left? The truth. You know what I mean? You might want to just go right to the truth, and that's what like affirmations try to do. And it's fine to have affirmations, but understand this, that you can't put fresh paint over a peeling house, right? If the paint is peeling, if the wood is rotten, and someone says, well, what you need is a paint job, your mind goes, well, that sounds easy. I'll just paint. So I'll just sort of, try to gloss over these experiences. I'll either avoid them, or I'll try to get rid of somebody or something in my life that's causing this pain. But doesn't life just tend to repeat itself, particularly around those issues that keep coming up? If we have problem with jealousy, don't we find that even if we get rid of the person we were jealous of, or was causing us to feel jealous, don't we notice that shortly thereafter another jealous scenario will arise for us? So that's not moving us any closer to who and what we truly are. What moves us closer to who and what we truly are, as we said, is to experience the falseness of those reactions in our life, so that we can see through them, so that they no longer have power over us. Yes? So, while the mind is going to try to protect us and to try to avoid situations that cause those experiences that we don't want to have, our spirit says, bring it on. That which is not afraid, which is your true self, says, bring it on, and I will show you, mind, that there's nothing for you to be afraid of. It's just like, when a little kid cries out in the middle of the night, and a parent goes in and says to the child, Johnny, what's wrong? Why are you crying? And Johnny says, I saw a monster in my closet. There's a monster in my closet. And the parent says, no, there's not. And the child says, yes, I saw it. And the parent, who is not joining the child in that false perception, it could, but wisdom says, let's find out if that's true. So the parent goes over and flips on what? The light. and says, Johnny, now look in the closet. What do you see? He says, oh, that's my wetsuit hanging up in there. Thought it was a monster. Now, if the parent had said, there's no monster, or maybe there is a monster, but you'll be okay. I'll come help you if the monster comes closer. The child is going to have trouble being peaceful with that thought. But once the child knows that what it thought was the danger in the room is gone, then it can go back to its true nature, which is peace, and allow it to sleep in heavenly peace. So this is our prescription for this week. Instead of avoiding and covering up and trying to protect those things that have us feeling less than whole and peaceful and loving, is actually to welcome them. And the mind will never welcome them. So you have to understand that there's a mind that's always trying to do all these machinations to change the landscape of your life. But there's a part of you that is connected to the truth of your being that is capable of welcoming everything that arises in life. Because it has no fear. It sees that, knowing its nature, it knows that it can't be diminished. It can't be hurt. It can't be stained. It can't be limited or diminished in any way. That's the part of you that you ask to welcome these feelings, welcome these samskaras. And the way that I've heard it described very well is someone says, I can't imagine how that could be, that there's a part of me that would just welcome all this difficult and hard stuff. And so the way to understand this is given as like the space in this room. What did the room have to do to prepare for you guys to come in today? And I'm not talking about the logistics and the setup, but the room, the space in this room. What did the space in this room need to do to prepare for you to come in today? Nothing. Nothing. And would it have mattered if what we came in here was 50 people on motorcycles? Would it have to do anything to prepare for that? No. And even two gangs that were clashing and fighting each other, what would the room need to do to prepare itself for that? Nothing. So isn't there an implied allowance in this space? That it allows whatever is in the space to be there? Yes? Now that's what awareness is. That's what consciousness is. It's the thoughtless space that allows all things to be. Because it isn't separate from anything. It has no notion of conflict. It can never be in conflict. You can't be in conflict with something that's already you. So the infinite is part of everything. And you are this infinite being, space. This notion that you stand apart from what life is, what's happening in life, is a conditioned notion, the releasing of which is what moves us back to our true nature. Does this make sense? So I'm going to say one more thing, then we're going to let you go and you can have dinner, because we're staying over very late. When do we start? 12:15, right? Okay. So in the Eastern traditions, particularly Hinduism and Vedanta, the Vedantic approach to dealing with uncomfortable emotions is to distance yourself from it. For the purpose, this is sort of like, it's two sides, but this would be our first step. First step. We distance ourselves by noticing that feeling that's so uncomfortable is something that we observe. So we sort of affirm the duality. There's me, the observer, and then there's this feeling of sadness. And now I'm not sad because I'm observing it. And that which you are, you can't be that which you observe. Because you as the observer can see things come and see things go, and you remain. So step one is just realizing what you really are in relationship to these difficult feelings and emotions and situations. And once you realize that, you begin to change your identity. You know, I'm not my sadness. I'm not what she said about me. I'm not any of those things which come and go. But I am the one who's aware of it. That's the first step. And the second step is you move closer to the emotion. You, instead of distancing yourself, you become the space like the room. And you just allow it to be. In other words, you don't resist it. You don't resist it. Now that doesn't mean that you don't take care of yourself, so we don't want to misread this, that if you're in danger, and particularly in physical danger, but even emotional or psychological danger, that you don't take steps to remove yourself from the situation. But we have so much ordinary emotions that occupy our mind, that get us trapped, that get us stuck, that cause us to suffer throughout a given day. That all that psychological suffering that is optional, that doesn't have to be there. So by moving, by first recognizing that we're not our sadness or what's bothering us, we're not this apparent thorn that we have, we are that which observes it. Now we're in a state where we can actually move closer to that difficulty. We move closer to it, and that's the Tantric approach. Vedantic is pulling yourself back and noticing that you're not what you're experiencing, you are the observer. And then the Tantric approach is when you move closer to it, and when you, from the standpoint of knowing that you are infinite consciousness or the space in this room, you can move towards what's going on. And from that perspective of being separate, sort of, not that, then you have the capacity to be with it and let it show its true colors to you. And so often when we keep things at a distance, there's maybe a physical sensation, but then there's a whole story, right? If, let's say we're really angry because we just had an exchange with our partner and it was really painful. It isn't just what they said. It isn't even that you now have this experience called anger that is causing you to be upset. It's that you're believing a story that you made up based on your past and your history. Something to do with that person doesn't respect me. That person doesn't think I matter. That person, I need consideration, I'm not getting it. I need to be honored, I need to be loved. I need. And that situation triggered you feeling that because you're identified as a separate, needy individual. That's why it hurt, and that's why it sticks around unless we explore it, unless we move closer to it, allow it to be, and then just see it for what it is. And we have to be brave, and we have to be willing to be uncomfortable. But you're already uncomfortable. So are you willing to be uncomfortable a little bit longer for a long-lasting freedom from discomfort? That's what determines how we do our life. When are we finally sick and tired of being sick and tired? When are we finally willing to sit in this place of discomfort so that discomfort can finally have its due? And our divine parent can flip the light switch and show us that what we thought was really limiting us was nothing more than a thought and a belief. I don't know. How long? How long? And no one is imposing this willingness on us. We have it within ourselves. All the discomfort, in fact, that we feel is not a function of what's missing in our life or what's not right about our life. It's being identified with the one that we're not, who we're not. Who we're not needs life to be a certain way. That's what causes the pain and the suffering. And when we get that, then we are powerful, empowered, right? Because then we're no longer victims of the world we see. We're victors because we are no longer controlled. Our well-being is no longer moderated by the events and circumstances of our lives. Our well-being comes from its natural state of being, from our natural state of being. It allows everything to be as it shows up. And sure, we may have our preferences, and it isn't about certainly not about being a doormat. But you can't be a God self and a doormat. A doormat would just be another notion, another belief that I'm a victim. So let's go inside, shall we? Take a moment to go in. So take a deep breath with me. And just release whatever might be going on in your mind right now. We can pick it up later if we need to. Let's just affirm and know that this is a golden opportunity for us to release and to let go of everything that is not true. God's will for our life is to know ourselves as we truly are. Every spiritual teacher has given some version of this affirmation. The problem is not what's happening in our life. The problem is we have come to believe that we are separate from life, from other people, from the happiness and the peace that we seek. And the truth is that the unhappiness we experience is the tension created from knowing who we truly are deep down and experiencing life separate from that. But the truth is the truth that will always be present. It has never left you. And it's waiting sort of patiently for us to awaken to its reality as us. It wants to expand as you. It wants to be the unbridled, untethered expression of love and life and peace and wholeness. This is its desire, its only desire. It cares nothing about circumstances. It has no need for life to be a certain way. It is like the space in this room. So notice right now that when you're not engaged in activity or thought, and you just sit with the notion of what am I? What am I? Is there just pure conscious awareness? Without an object to be aware of, what's left? When all objects, when all externals run their course, live their life expectancy, move through our consciousness. When they go, when they're no longer uppermost in our mind, what remains? Jesus said, I am with you always. Was he talking about his body? No. He said, before Abraham was, I am. Could he be talking about his body? Or his essence? This is the message of awakening. You are the essence. You are a divine essence in a embodied experience called human form. But that does not replace or supplant your true identity. It only covers it, colors it over. Just like the light of a projector. It's the picture, the projection is a matter of the slide or the film through which the light shines. But the light, if you go to the source, is pure and whole, in which all needs are met. So let us move back from our projections, our beliefs, and go to the source of consciousness itself. And from here, we will find the peace that passes all human understanding. And will enable us to boldly move forward to dispel the illusions of life. One slight shift of perception at a time. We thank you, Spirit, that you have given us the means and the possibility and the method to know ourselves as you created us. May we have the courage to stand and look at the seeming monsters and dangers of the human life, to discover that which cannot be harmed or diminished or stained, no matter what. And may we know this forever and ever, through whatever. Amen. At 12:15 we gather in the kids' room, so I hope you'll join us. Bring your thorns.